Let's lock in. David just dropped a bombshell that turned the whole industry upside down. On September 9th, 2025, the cops pulled up on some seriously disturbing vibes at Hollywood Town on North Mansfield Avenue. What kicked off as workers complaining about a nasty stench coming from an impounded ride ended up exploding into one of the darkest scandals tied to a rising star. And the ride in question? Tesla registered to 20-year-old singer David Anthony Burke, better known as David, the same dude who had the Globe hooked on tracks like Romantic Homicide and Here With Me, songs that racked up billions of streams worldwide. But that Monday morning, David's name got dragged into something way more sinister than topping the charts. Workers at the yard couldn't ignore that foul odor seeping from the Tesla, and when cops popped the front trunk, the frunk on those electric cars, what they uncovered was beyond chilling. Inside was a body badly decomposed, stuffed in a bag, and mangled to the point of being nearly unrecognizable. The remains weighed only about 71 pounds, broken down and left in such a disturbing state that figuring out who it was seemed almost impossible. Investigators knew right away. This wasn't just tragedy, this was straight-up foul play. And here's the part that made everything even wilder. The timing. While detectives in LA were dealing with the gruesome discovery, David was out on stage performing 4 packed-out crowds on his We World tour. In fact, he had a show scheduled at the Fillmore in Minneapolis on the exact same day the body was pulled from his car. Fans were in shock. How could he be living like a superstar while his name was being tied to something so dark? At first, the streets and the media were still showing love, calling him the young king. But whispers started spreading fast. On top of everything, David's Tesla had been reported stolen just a week before. Word in the block was somebody jacked his whip and used it for some grimy business. But even from the start, the whole situation didn't add up. That car had been sitting abandoned in the Hollywood Hills for nearly 5 days before the tow truck came through, and neighbors swore they'd been catching a foul smell the whole time. At first, they thought it was just a past animal, but it turned out to be something way darker. What really set alarms off was how fast the corporate world flipped on him. Crocs and Hollister, 2 of the biggest brands backing his image, cut ties with him the second this news hit. Moves that quick made people wonder, did they already know more than the public? Then came the heartbreaking description of the victim. The remains were of a woman about 5'1" with wavy black hair. She was found wearing a tube top, black leggings, a yellow chain bracelet, and a single stud earring. But the detail that turned this from mystery to revelation was a tiny tattoo on her right index finger. That small ink mark was about to blow this case wide open. To really understand why the discovery hit so hard, you got to look at who David was before all this chaos. Born in Queens, New York, he moved to Houston, Texas as a kid, got homeschooled after 7th grade, and stayed rooted in his Christian faith. He looked like the perfect underdog success story. A kid from nothing who clawed his way up with talent, vision, and relentless hustle. And his come up. It's totally different from most artists in the game. Back in 2021, he started out making Fortnite gaming montages on YouTube, laying his own tracks on top just to dodge copyright issues. What started as a quick fix turned into a pipeline to superstardom, landing him a deal with Darkroom and Interscope Records. His rise read like a modern hood fairy tale until that one moment in November 2021 when a copyright strike had him heated. Losing that gaming revenue had David stressed. But when he ran to his mom about the money drying up, she dropped some real wisdom that flipped his whole future, armed with nothing but an iPhone, a pair of Apple earbuds, and a free app called BandLab. He started cooking up music in his sister's closet. He'd dig through YouTube for type beats, download them, and record straight into his phone's mic. That lo-fi, raw, intimate sound that everybody later praised as his signature wasn't some genius artistic vision. It was just him making the best out of scraps. Then came the moment that changed everything. Romantic Homicide. Dropped on July 20th, 2022. That track went crazy, peaking at number 3 on the Hot Alternative Songs chart and climbing all the way to number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100. The wildest part, It was all recorded in that same closet on that same phone, dripping with lyrics that sounded straight from the soul. But when you listen now, those dark words hit way differently. The song had lines like in the back of my mind, "I killed you and I didn't even regret it." At the time, David explained it away in interviews, saying it was about ending emotions in his head, not real violence. Back then, it felt like creative storytelling from a young artist just working through feelings. But with everything that's happened, those bars feel almost chilling. By the time the Tesla nightmare hit, David wasn't just a kid making Fortnite montages anymore. He was a full-blown multi-platinum superstar with billions of Spotify streams. He was touring with heavy hitters, lighting up festivals, becoming the voice for a generation that felt disconnected and heartbroken, especially after the pandemic. His music spoke to loneliness, pain, and the desperate need for connection in a cold digital world. But here's the twist. Despite the fame, David kept his personal life low-key. He was still holed up in Houston, recording in that same closet, keeping his Christian faith front and center, even going to family Bible studies every week. On the outside, he looked like a grounded young king who hadn't let fame take over. But behind the music, the cracks were starting to show. The clash between the squeaky clean image David had built and the ugly truth creeping out was about to make this scandal explode even harder. As the investigation heated up, David's camp claimed he was cooperating with the feds, while still keeping his Withered World tour rolling like nothing was wrong. His statements were polished, carefully worded, and made sure to stress his innocence and cooperation. Meanwhile, his legal team kept pushing reporters to law enforcement, a move that showed they were treating it seriously, but clearly weren't ready to hit the panic button just yet. The Tesla itself became the centerpiece of the case. A 2023 model rocking Texas plates and registered under David's full government name. And where was it found? Parked in the ultra-CH streets of Hollywood Hills. It's one of the most high-profile neighborhoods in LA. That raised a crazy question. Why would anyone dump a car hiding a body in one of the most visible bougie spots in the city? From day one, investigators were facing major hurdles. The body inside was so badly decomposed that even nailing down basic details, age, race, cause of death was a nightmare. Wrapped up in plastic, it was obvious somebody had tried to mask the smell and cover up evidence. But that plan failed big time. The forensic timeline suggested the remains had been riding in that whip for weeks, maybe even months. Just imagine. Somebody was out here cruising around with human remains sitting in the car for who knows how long. But investigators weren't completely blind. Tesla vehicles are basically rolling computers tracking everything where they go. How they're driven, even usage patterns that could point to who was behind the wheel. On top of that, the Bird Streets area is famous for being security heavy. Expensive cribs lined with Ring doorbells, private surveillance systems, and high-end cameras everywhere could all hold the key to figuring out when the Tesla was dropped off and maybe even who left it there. And once the story of the body in Davis Tesla hit the streets and blew up online, that's when the whispers started turning into full-blown shockwaves. The streets went into full meltdown with rumors and wild theories flying everywhere. David's fanbase, famous for riding or dying for their boy, rushed to defend him. At first, they pointed out he had been on tour performing in front of thousands the same day the body was discovered to them. The timeline seemed airtight. How could he be involved when he was hundreds of miles away on stage? But not everybody was buying that story. Some people started asking two questions. Why did those major brands ditch him so fast? What did they know that the public didn't? And no matter where David was, how does a decomposed body end up inside his car? The whole thing started sounding like the setup to a dark street legend. A young star at the top of the game, a mysterious death, and a tangle of secrets waiting to explode. And it did, just 8 days after the gruesome find. The LA County Medical Examiner dropped a bomb on September 17, 2025. The remains were officially identified as belonging to Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a teenage girl who had been reported missing from Lake Elsinore, California back on April 5, 2024. The news smashed into the music world like a freight train. This wasn't some nameless tragedy. This was a young girl who had been gone for over a year, now found in the car of one of the industry's fastest rising stars. The detail that made the ID possible was straight chilling. Investigators zeroed in on a tiny tattoo on her right index finger. A design that wasn't just unique, it matched a nearly identical tattoo that David himself carried on his right hand. TMZ revealed the difference. Celeste's tattoo was Donaine red ink, while David's version was in black. And here's the kicker. David was first spotted with his tattoo in September 2024. Months after Celeste had already gone missing. Then came the revelation that made the case even darker. Celeste's mother told investigators that before her daughter disappeared, she had confided about having a boyfriend. Now, this wasn't just whispers on social media or fan theories. The link between Celeste and David was looking disturbingly real. The tragedy cut even deeper when her true age came into focus. Official records confirmed Chua was just 15 when she vanished. Online chatter claimed she might have been even younger. But either way, the fact remained. This was a child's life cut short, and the trail of evidence was circling right back to a superstar. Celeste grew up in Lake Elsinore, a working-class city in Riverside County about 70 miles southeast of Los Angeles, worlds away from the flashy lifestyle David was stepping into. Her birthday was September 7th, a date that would take on an eerie twist once investigators uncovered more details about her connection to him. She was described as 5'on" with wavy black hair, part of a close-knit Hispanic family. Living the everyday life of a teenager before everything spun out of control, but once detectives and journalists started digging, shocking clues about her connection to David began spilling out. Photos surfaced online that appeared to show the two together, including FaceTime screenshots with friends. One image allegedly showed them side by side at 3:51 a.m., sparking serious questions about what their relationship really was. The timeline only made things look more troubling. Online chatter claimed their connection went back years during the period when David was still grinding in music before his breakout hit. The math raised eyebrows. David, born in March 2005, would have been in his late teens, while Celeste was still very young. If true, it suggested this wasn't just some new link. It was a relationship that had been developing quietly for a long time. Then came the alleged digital trail. Screenshots started circulating across social platforms, supposedly showing David messaging Celeste through Discord back in 2022 when she would have been barely a teenager. If those screenshots proved authentic, they'd be damning evidence that their connection wasn't just casual. It crossed lines that should never have been crossed. The most chilling part, those messages allegedly lined up with the exact same time. David's career was skyrocketing off the success of Romantic Homicide, and just when it seemed like the case couldn't get any darker, friends of Celeste shared heartbreaking messages dated April 29, 2024, weeks after she had already been reported missing. These posts suggested she was still alive at that point, hiding out and in a relationship her friends were deeply concerned about. The picture being painted wasn't just tragic. It was the story of a teenager caught in a situation far beyond her control, and people were left wondering how it all ended so fatally. The leaked messages pulled the curtain back on some of the darkest parts of Celeste's story, and the name David kept coming up again and again. In one chilling exchange, she admitted to being scared, saying he had come back to her crying, then warned her friends, "Do not text me." The context painted a heartbreaking picture. Celeste was hiding out with someone and terrified of being found. Her friends, desperate to protect her, pressed her with questions. They asked if she was really going to keep seeing David or go back with him, because they didn't want her falling deeper into danger. Her answer froze them in their tracks. "I'm safe." "No, I'm not." Those words showed just how trapped and conflicted she felt. The conversations revealed several disturbing truths. First, Celeste's friends clearly knew she was tied up in something dangerous with David. Second, they knew she was using a burner Instagram to stay in touch while keeping her location secret. And third, there were exchanges that hinted at inappropriate intimacy. suggesting a relationship that crossed lines in every wrong way for a teenager who was only around 14 or 15. While David was already 19 or 20, the implications were flat out disturbing. The last of her messages painted the image of a young girl trying to pull away from him, but terrified of what would happen if she did. Her friends kept checking in, urging her to stay safe, and begging her not to delete her Instagram so they could keep reaching her. Those were the final communications. Messages of a teenager who felt cornered, scared, and unable to escape. At that point, the idea that David's Tesla had just been stolen and used by some random stranger fell apart completely. The receipts showed he knew Celeste personally, had been involved with her, and that she was still alive weeks after being reported missing. Suddenly, the case wasn't just about a body in a car, it was about a superstar with direct ties to a missing girl. And then things got even murkier. Rumors of hush money started flying online. Instagram posts claimed David had been paying people to keep quiet about his relationship with her. One user even alleged that a friend had been shown proof that David owed money in Lake Elsinore for being with a minor. That allegation lit the streets on fire because, if true, it meant people close to David knew what was happening all along and stayed silent for a payout. What started looking like random rumors was now painting a far darker picture. One that hinted at a whole system designed to keep David's secret relationship buried. Allegations of hush money suggested people were getting paid off to stay silent instead of exposing what was really going down, but just when everyone thought the case couldn't get any darker, investigators uncovered a detail. Twisted it sent chills through the entire industry. Celestia's birthday was September 7th, and back in 2022, on that exact same date, David had dropped Romantic Homicide, the hit with lyrics about ending someone in his mind. Now, fast forward to 2025. Investigators concluded that Tesla holding her body had likely been abandoned on September 7th, the very day she would have turned 16 and exactly 3 years after that song's release. The symbolism was too eerie to brush off. It felt like a sick pattern hidden in plain sight. And it didn't stop there. Online chatter pointed to more disturbing connections between David's music and Celeste. Alleged messages from her brother claimed David had written an unreleased track titled Celeste with lyrics about the girl with my name tattooed on her chest. Those same alleged posts claimed her brother had uncovered private exchanges between the two. Love notes, photos, and messages that made the relationship pundonal. The brothers' alleged statements painted the picture of a family that had suspected something was seriously wrong, but felt powerless to stop it. He even claimed he tried handing over evidence to police, but nothing moved, possibly because of David's rising celebrity status at the time. That accusation poured gasoline on public outrage. Was his fame protecting him from accountability? As public attention blew up, more and more whispers came out. Reports swirled that David had been spotted around Celeste's neighborhood in Lake Elsinore before she vanished. Others said people in his inner circle had long known about the relationship but chose silence over truth. And the age gap was now the center of everything. David was 20 years old, already rich and famous with money, influence, and the power to control situations. Celeste, just 15, came from a working-class family with none of that protection. The imbalance of power was glaring. Even if you set the unaliving aside, legal experts said the evidence pointed to potential charges like statutory rape, child endangerment, and possibly even federal counts if she had ever been moved across state lines. By the time Celeste's identity and connection to David hit the headlines, the case shifted from speculation to something much darker, an unfolding nightmare that could ruin his career and land him behind bars for life. What started out looking like a possible mix-up or stolen car case had now flipped into something way darker. A full-blown homicide investigation with a victim and a suspect tied directly together. LAPD officially classified Celeste's passing as a homicide, though the exact cause was still pending. Because of how advanced the decomposition was, the medical examiner said the body had likely been there for months. And when reports dropped that the remains had been dismembered, the horror level went through the roof. That gruesome detail showed this wasn't just on a living. It looked like somebody went out of their way to cover it up and destroy evidence. With the body in such a condition, figuring out the exact cause of passing was going to be nearly impossible. Still, there was no question left about whether a crime had been committed. The dismemberment, the plastic wrapping, and the way the body was hidden screamed deliberate foul play. The only question left was who did it and how. As investigators pieced together Celeste's final months, a heartbreaking story came into focus. She was a teenager who had allegedly been groomed by someone older, a man with fame and resources. She was isolated from her family, forced into hiding, and dependent on the very person who may have ended her life. And those matching tattoos, they didn't look like signs of love anymore. They looked like branding, a twisted symbol of control. At this point, the case against David wasn't about a stolen ride or mistaken identity anymore. It was about a 20-year-old star accused of being tied to a minor who vanished. A girl with a tattoo matching his own and whose body ended up in his car like a tomb. The music world and his fans were now staring down an ugly truth. Their rising icon might not be the hero they thought, but something darker. Thanks for watching. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so more people can see what's really going on. And don't forget, click on one of the cards on your screen to watch more stories just like this. See you on the next.